and welcome. You're listening to Nails and Hammers, a podcast where we talk to people about their journeys and understand how they take decisions in their day-to-day lives. Our guest for today is Arunabh Sinha, who is the founder and CEO of Uclean, India's first organized chain of laundromats. Hi Arunabh, welcome to the Nails and Hammers podcast.
Thank you, Kushal. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. Looking forward to the next 1 hour of interaction.
Yep, likewise. The last 1.5 years has been quite difficult for startups in general and for everyone as well. But there have been a few positives too. Can you share a few positives that happened in the Uclean journey for you?
When you talk about the last 1.5 years in particular, and obviously that is the hottest topic that everybody is broaching right now. So when I talk about these last 1.5 years where COVID has been at its peak and people across the world are struggling, in some ways not the right thing to say, but COVID has been a blessing in disguise for Uclean in particular. But if you look at the overall industry, you would realize that even today, about 97% of the total laundry industry is controlled by the local dhobi. Yep. And they, in that sense, are the biggest competitor to Uclean. Mm-hmm. So what we realized when we started Uclean almost 5 years back was that there were two major challenges when we decided to attack the customers that were already outsourcing their laundry to the local dhobi. Mm-hmm. One was obviously the price points, since the local dhobi generally did not have any formal setup. So his input costs like rentals, salaries, etc. were under control. But the second most important factor which we realized was that a lot of the business that dhobi gets is all based on relationship. So you would see that in many cases, my grandfather used a particular dhobi. So my father would use the grandfather, that dhobi's son, and then my son would also use the dhobi's grandson. So the relationship actually continues from one generation to another, and it becomes very difficult to break that kind of a relationship. But unfortunately, due to COVID, relationship, pricing, etc., have all gone down the drain. And the only focus that customers today have hygiene and sanitization. So they want transparency. They want to see where the clothes are getting washed, how are they getting washed, what kind of chemicals and detergents are being used. And unfortunately, the dhobi is in no position to offer this comfort to the customer because he doesn't have a setup. There is no exposure to the machines or the chemicals. So a lot of customers in the last 1.5 years across all the cities that we're operational, we have seen a lot of new customers getting added. And when we interviewed these customers, we realized that they were not new to laundry. Mm-hmm. So they had been using laundry for the longest possible time, but they were new to Uclean. Till date, they were only using the local dhobi, but because of sanitization and disinfection concern, hygiene concern during COVID-19, they have started migrating en masse from the dhobi system to Uclean. So in that sense, COVID has been a blessing in disguise and a big turnaround for Uclean in particular.
I mean, that's wonderful. So in a sense, COVID accelerated the inevitable, something that would happen 5-10 years down the line happened now.
Right.
Yeah. So now I want to rewind back and start from the very beginning. Can you share a bit about where did you grow up and what all did you study?
I am quintessentially a small town boy. I grew up in this small city called Jamshedpur, which is globally famous for being called the Tata Nagar and for housing the biggest plants of Tata. Okay. So my father was a government doctor and he used to teach in the government medical college in Jamshedpur. So I did my entire 12th, right from nursery to the 12th standard, I was in Jamshedpur in the same school. In fact, all the siblings, so both my sisters and I went there and all of us did their 12th from there. And then I went to IIT Bombay to pursue my engineering. So I did BTech in metallurgical engineering and material science. Mm-hmm. And then for a couple of years, I worked with different companies. So I started my career with this pharmaceutical consulting firm called ZS Associates, which is headquartered in Chicago. And we were working out of the Pune office. Mm-hmm. I worked there for a year. And then I decided to try my hands at not-for-profit work. So I worked for a little over 1 year with this company called Technoserve, which basically works with farmers at the grassroots level and basically works on their income enhancement. Mm-hmm. So this was a very fulfilling part. For the next 15, 16 months, I got to travel a lot did some exotic work with the government of Tibet in exile, and traveled a lot. But obviously, it being a not-for-profit organization, the salary was a little less. But I also got an exposure to a very interesting project where we helped an international coconut water manufacturing company. Today, it is very famous by the name of Vita Coco, an American company. They wanted to set up some direct procurement farms in Tamil Nadu. So we worked with them. We understood a lot about market entry. And that's where I decided to, I liked what market entry entailed. And that's where I started my first company, which is called FranGlobal, which is still there. And FranGlobal was basically a cross boutique consulting firm, which helped international brands enter into India and Indian brands expand internationally. So I built FranGlobal for the next 5 years. And in 2015, I sold off FranGlobal to a company called Franchise India and a company called Times of India. And then I exited FranGlobal. I joined this budget hotel startup called Tribo Hotels. And I was amongst the first few employees of Tribo. I was heading their North India business. And while I was running the North India business of Tribo Hotels, I also realized how big a problem laundry is for the budget hoteliers, for the budget hotel travelers. And that gave me an inspiration, that gave me an idea about the opportunity that is out there. And after running the North India business of Tribo for about 15 months, I quit Tribo and I started Uclean.
Makes sense. So just rewinding back a bit further as well. So, I mean, from studying metallurgical, why join ZS? And I saw a LinkedIn post where you mentioned that you hated working at ZS. Why so?
Yeah, so very honestly, like a lot of people from middle class background or the lower middle class background, a lot of us, when we decided to come to IIT, I never chose metallurgy. I'll be very honest. So the moment I got a rank at IIT, it was something in the 1800. I was very clear that I wanted to straight away take the leap from Jamshedpur to Mumbai. So in my mind, I was very clear that the department doesn't matter, the vertical doesn't matter. I want to be there at IIT Bombay. And during counseling, when I realized that the only way to get into IIT Bombay was to go for metallurgical engineering and material science, I went ahead with it. So that was how I chose metallurgy. And then I studied metallurgy, did my engineering in metallurgy. And at that point in time, the only two factors that I was looking at was one, the salary should be very good and it should be a reputed consulting firm. So I had already made up my mind that I would not be going to a Tata Steel despite coming from Tata Nagar. I was very clear that I wanted to do consulting. I wanted to bring about a lot of changes and I had some high hopes. So the salary that ZS offered and the profile they offered, I really liked it and I decided to take a plunge. And that was I would say possibly the last day that I had a relationship with metallurgy.
Oh, nice. And then why did you hate ZS?
Yeah, so that's another story. So I think I would blame it on my immaturity more than anything else. So ZS was a consulting firm, and the image that we had in mind was that consulting would entail a lot of front ending with very high end clients, moving around in jets, meeting a lot of front end clients. But that was not to be. ZS is in fact a consulting cum analytics firm. And at Pune office, our role was mainly to do a lot of number crunching, a lot of data crunching, data analytics, present the result to our team sitting in the US, who would then discuss these results with the end clients, who would be typically US-based pharmaceutical firms. So I liked it in the beginning. I liked learning the SaaS tool. I liked learning the entire Microsoft suite. But very soon I realized that this is not exactly my cup of tea. I'm not a big coder, or I don't really enjoy coding. And that's how by the end of first year, I was really fed up. And I knew that this is not the place I want to be.
You earlier mentioned that you wanted to go to consulting because you wanted to do a lot of like impact work, and because coming from Jamshedpur and things like that. So is that why you joined Technoserve after you left ZS?
Yeah, so I would say that was one of the main reasons why I decided to join Technoserve. In fact, if I talk about the team at Technoserve at that point in time, while Technoserve internationally was already a very, very big not-for-profit consulting firm, they had a presence in, I think, almost 70, 80 countries of the world, very big presence in South Africa and South America. and they were trying to find their footing in India. So they had a team of about 15 people.
Okay.
And I would say I was the only Indian in that team. So you either had NRIs or you had proper American consultants who had come there either because they were wanting to do an MBA degree thereafter and
Okay.
get some understanding of the social space.
Mhm.
But for me, the fact that when I spoke to these guys before joining, I realized that they were actually people who had been there, done that, who had already worked with farmers in South Africa and South America and had brought a lot of learning. And I would get to work very closely with them on understanding what is happening in the agricultural landscape in India
Mhm.
and also in other areas where there was a need for a huge, large scale impact. And that really inspired me, instigated me. And despite the fact that I was going to get 50%, exactly 50% of what I was getting in ZS, I decided to take that leap of faith.
That's interesting. And so, why are social consulting opportunities so lowly paid? And then should the salary be comparable to the mainstream firms?
So, yeah, you are absolutely right. And if I talk about Technoserve in particular, I would tell you that a lot of projects that we did, these were actually CSR initiatives of corporates like Cargill and Bunge.
Maybe
And
at that time the 2% CSR bill had come, or was it the same timeline?
yeah, right. So that was also the case. And a lot of these projects were actually, I would say, passovers from McKinsey. So
Mhm.
McKinsey would be working with, say, a company like Cargill on a very large project. And then during the discussions, Cargill would also say that, guys, we also have to spend some money on these CSR initiatives. And we understand that you guys would not work on such a low ticket size project. So do you have any recommendations? And typically, at any point in time, Technoserve would have at least 4 or 5 mainstream McKinsey consultants who were doing a 6 months internship or a
Mhm.
12-month internship at Technoserve. And hence they would take up these projects and start executing them
Mhm.
on behalf of McKinsey. Not all the projects, but there were quite a few projects which I know, which were actually passed on by the McKinsey team. And these were CSR initiatives of the clients that they were already servicing. And since these were low ticket size, so automatically they went to the not-for-profit consulting firm.
And then while you were at Techno, so you must have traveled to quite a few locations that you might have never thought of that you'll visit. So, what are some of your best travel stories?
Sure. So, in fact, there are locations that even today a lot of people would have never heard of. So, for almost 4 months, we worked on a project for the government of Tibet in exile. So, this was a project directly with the Dalai Lama. And when the Tibetans had escaped from the Chinese regime in 1950s and 60s, so the Indian government had offered them these small settlements which are distributed across India. So there are some about 50 odd such settlements. And as part of the project, we were to stay for 5 days at a go in multiple of these settlements, understand the challenges that the people are facing. Very importantly, because the government of Tibet in exile was already giving these people some grant.
Mhm.
So the government also wanted to make sure that these people become self-dependent and they do not become dependent on the grants, which is what was happening. So this was more of an intervention project where we had to come back to the government in exile with our recommendation on how we can make these settlements more Atmanirbhar. And I'm talking about 2010. So even today, when you go to Arunachal Pradesh, you would realize that people still struggle with a lot of basic necessities like electricity and water. But at that point in time, 10 years back, it was even more acute.
Fair enough. You also mentioned that you worked on an intervention project with the government in exile, where you gave in your recommendation. So I had a meta thought, which is, I mean, that's what consultants do. Consultants would give you reports and would say that, hey, this is what you should do. But like, does anyone work on those reports, or how far is the gap between consulting and implementation?
I would say there is a gap. I would not say the gap is not there. And you're very rightly identified the difference between consultation and implementation. But in this case, what we realized was that the government of Tibet in exile were genuinely very concerned because the funds that they used to raise from all the supporters worldwide, they were reducing. And the demand from these settlements in India,
Mhm.
I'm not very sure about what was happening internationally, but the demand from these settlements in India was only increasing. So which made them realize that these settlements have literally become dependent on the grants from the government of Tibet in exile. We got the opportunity to even meet the Dalai Lama, and we used to meet his government a lot, many times. And every time they had a lot of questions, and they also had a lot of questions around implementation. So there, they had a very similar view that we are not here looking for consultation, while you guys might call yourselves consultants, but we would need your hand holding in implementing these recommendations that you're giving.
So in a nutshell, it depends on the quote unquote client who wants to go the extra mile to actually.
Right.
Yeah. And then after leaving Technoserve, you started FranGlobal. So how did that happen?
So like I said, one of the projects that I worked at Technoserve just before the Tibetan project was with this American company called Vita Coco, which is today one of the biggest packaged coconut water manufacturer in the US. And at that point in time, till then, they were only importing coconuts from Brazil and some parts of the US and packaging them. But they were very clear that they also wanted to tap the Indian market because of lower input costs. So they gave us this assignment where they initially wanted us to identify areas where the coconut production is in abundance, where the quality of coconut water is good, and where they had large sized coconut farmers. So coconut farmers with potentially access to hectares of land. That project was full of learning. So I traveled a lot in the southern part of India, got a lot of understanding, and also since I interacted very closely with the core team at Vita Coco, I also got a semblance of the kind of questions they have and the thought process that goes behind taking a decision on entering India.
How did you scale FranGlobal, and how did you convince other corporates to work with you?
A very valid question, and I would say we got lucky. So while working at FranGlobal, the first project that we fortunately got was with Triumph Motorcycles, and Triumph, which is an American motorbikes company. They were planning on entering India, and at that point in time, the guy who was the vice president and heading this entire initiative, he was a senior from IIT Bombay. So I wrote him a very nice mail, and fortunately he responded. So the alumni got struck, and he responded back saying that, yes, you read it right. We are looking at entering India. And then I pitched him as to how we have helped, which was not true, how we have helped multiple brands enter into India and how we understand the India entry landscape. So he liked the idea, but more importantly, he also stressed that the fact that you come from the same institution. So there is more than just a consultant and client relationship. It's going to be a relationship which is also going to be based on emotions and the fact that we come from the same alma mater. And basis that, I'm willing to give that project to you. So that's how we fortunately landed our first project. And I'll be honest, he actually handheld us through this entire consulting assignment on what should we do, what kind of focus group discussions should we do, it should be the right markets to enter. And then basis a lot of research, basis a lot of interviews, we were able to guide them in the right direction. We made good money, but then the biggest thing is then Triumph became a very big testimonial for us. And then in the next 4 years, we brought in a lot of international chains like Carl's Jr. Burgers, Johnny Rockets, mainly American brands, which are big in the franchising space and that were looking at India because it's a very lucrative market.
I mean, your experience at FranGlobal taught you how to scale franchisee business. So what all lessons did you learn on growing a franchisee business in India?
I think the biggest lesson that I learned, I would say there was one very big lesson that I learned at FranGlobal, was that franchising business is all about relationships. So unlike US or UK, where you have proper franchising laws that govern the relationship between franchisor and franchisee, unfortunately in India, we still do not have any franchising laws that actually govern the relationship between a franchisor and franchisee.
And then post FranGlobal, you joined Tribo Hotels. And from Tribo, you started Uclean. So how did the idea for Uclean come to you?
When you look at culturally and behaviorally, India is more similar to Southeast Asia than it is to US or Europe. So I used to travel a lot to Jakarta, Kuala Lumpur, and Manila. Okay. And the idea was twofold. One was to look at the brands that were growing in these parts of the world. The second was that we were also working with some very good Indian brands like Sarvana Bhavan and Haldirams. So the idea was also to explore the opportunity for bringing these brands into Southeast Asia. So when I went there in 2011, what I noticed was that the Dhobi culture was very, very strong and very similar to what we had in India. So you had this entrepreneur who would be coming on a bicycle, who would be carrying his bag. He would collect the dirty clothes, he would deliver the clean clothes. And then the customers, they would have no visibility into how and where these clothes are getting washed. But gradually from 2010 to 2015, as I kept visiting these cities again and again, I literally saw an explosion of laundromats. So by the time we were in 2015, I'm not kidding you, but Jakarta alone would have 3,000 laundromats, proper organized stores where you had the laundry machine, you had the steam iron table, all inside the store. So that gave me an inspiration, or rather, that gave me an idea that if this can work in Manila, if this can work in Jakarta, why can't this work in India? So I started dabbling with the thought of introducing laundries or organized laundromats at some point in time in future. And I started my research. I started reading a lot of material on the laundry industry, on the dry cleaning industry. But Tribo acted as the trigger. So when I went to Tribo, the overall premise that Tribo has, that if you're a budget hotelier and you're not doing well for a variety of reasons, then you can come on board Tribo, and Tribo would help you improve in terms of marketing, sales, in terms of improving your occupancy rate. In return, we would expect you as a hotelier to guarantee us customer delight. Now, when you go to a website like TripAdvisor, you would realize that in India in particular, the maximum escalations that happen at budget hotel level happen because of dirty laundry. So either your bed sheets are dirty, your towels are dirty, your curtains are dirty, your pillow covers are dirty, or when you give your clothes to the hotelier to get them washed, they come back very dirty. The moment we start scaling up Tribo, we started realizing that this is in fact the biggest problem that is plaguing the entire budget hotel industry right now, and need to figure out a solution. So that's when I went on the ground. I started talking to laundry players. I started understanding the market size of India. And during that research, two things stood out very clearly. One was that you're talking about an industry which is almost $70 billion in size. And this is a KPMG report from 2016, which said that Indian laundry industry would be $70 billion plus in size, with 98% unorganized, which means that it is only local dhobis. There was not a single player that we could identify who would be able to offer us services in more than one city. So that's when I felt that there's such a big opportunity, such a huge level of organization. Why not start something and start working on organizing this industry? And that's how Uclean started.
So who were your first customers at Uclean, and then how did you find a product market fit?
So that's also a very interesting story. When we started Uclean, the first biggest challenge was that we had a paucity of funds. We did not have enough money to fund ourselves. But fortunately, my wife stood behind me and she said, I'll make sure that we make enough to run the family. So we started it in 2016, October. And then I realized that even to start one single store, we would need someone to invest in that particular store. So that's when I started reaching out to the existing dry cleaners in Delhi NCR.
Okay.
Dry cleaning is a market which is very mature in India, which has existed for hundreds of years. And you would realize that dry cleaning made a lot of sense till about 30 years back. Because as Indians, we used to wear a lot of ethnic clothes. Like my mom, I have never seen her wear anything except a sari. And my wife, in the last 6 years that we have gotten married, she would have probably worn the sari 6 times in 6 years. So that is how the behavioral change has happened, where we have moved away from ethnic clothes, expensive clothes, ornamental clothes, to casual clothes. Casual clothes means you don't need to dry clean them. You need to launder them. You need to simply wash and iron them. So I reached out with this hypothesis to all the existing dry cleaners in Delhi NCR, trying to explain them that your business is going down. Why not partner with us and also get into the laundry business in parallel?
Nice.
Almost 90% of them dismissed us. Remaining 9% said that they agree with our findings, but they don't believe we can pull it off. After almost, I would say, 60, 70 rejections, we finally found one dry cleaner who had multiple outlets between Delhi and Gurgaon.
Mhm.
And he said that I'm ready to do it, but I'm not going to take the bet alone. So I have 6 outlets. I'll give 2 of them to you. I'll
Nice.
make all the investment. I'll invest in the machinery. I'll invest in the infrastructure, in the branding, etc. You need to give me an assured return, and you need to run the show. So that's how the first couple of Uclean started. We consciously chose both our first 2 stores in what I call hyper local neighborhood markets.
Okay.
So I had a store in Delhi, which is still there in this area called Vasant Kunj in Delhi. So what we did was we found a shop that was bang opposite the Mother Dairy booth. And
Okay.
the reason for that was this booth always witnessed a very high footfall in the morning and
Mhm.
the evening.
Yeah.
So we wanted people who came to Mother Dairy to notice us that there is a strange looking store that has come bang opposite Mother Dairy,
Mhm.
which has very large size machines.
Mhm.
And that actually intrigued a lot of people. They came in, they
Mhm.
touch and felt our machines, and they wanted to give it a shot. So that's how our first customers started coming in.
I mean, so being a founder is a very lonely journey, and then you getting those rejections must be very disheartening. So, how did you deal with those rejections, and then yeah, what kept you going?
I still remember an episode where we went to this dry cleaner again in Delhi, and we started talking. And he said, "No, I know you are the new age startup. You will invest. You will help us increase our income. So let me first order some tea for you." And he called up his tea wala and told him that "Beta chai le aao." And then when I started explaining the proposition, so he said that, "So you are saying I should invest in your business and not the other way around. And what is the ground for that?" So I tried to explain it to him. Then he again picked up the phone and he called the chai, "Beta chai mat lana." If you
Nice.
guys are done, then you can please take a leave. I'm not interested in partnering with beggars.
Mhm.
So we got rejections to that level. And at many a point, many times it was disheartening. It was a bit discomforting. But there was always that fear in the back of my head, which kept telling me that if I don't do it now, somebody else will do it, say a couple of years later. And then I will repent saying that, yeah, I got this idea first. So I think this fear always overpowered my feeling of insult or feeling of embarrassment
Mhm.
and kept pushing me to do something.
And then when you started a store opposite the Mother Dairy shop, so I mean, Uclean was always a mass market product from the very beginning, or was it a commercial? I mean, did you dealt with commercial customers as well?
No, so what we realized was that commercial laundry, which is where you talk about the budget hotels or you talk about the hospitals, is going to be a challenge for someone who's just starting off. Because when you look at it, even if you're catering to a 50-room budget hotel property, you would need a setup worth, say, anywhere in excess of 25 to 30 lakh rupees.
Mhm.
And we did not have that kind of funds. We did not have any investor willing to take such a big bet. Secondly, when you talk about the commercial laundry or the B2B laundry, you would also realize that a lot of it is based on credit.
Mhm.
And we were not prepared to work on a credit model, at least not at that point in time. And hence, our idea was that we would start off small. We would focus on the retail laundry, which is where you would be targeting households, bachelors, students.
Mhm.
Focus on them, win their confidence, make the store profitable, collect the cash immediately upon delivery, and then look at a future expansion where you could tie up with these
Mhm.
larger institutions. So our hypothesis from the very beginning, and fortunately it has paid off for us, is that the focus, which is 80%, should always be the retail laundry, which is your bachelor students and households, and 20% would be your hotel laundry.
Mhm.
But what we did was we introduced a bit of twist. So
Okay.
India was pretty much used to laundry by the piece or
Mhm.
laundry by the pair. So by
Okay.
the piece is, for example, we would charge you 15 rupees for washing and ironing one piece of shirt. Or maybe I'll wash and iron your shirt and trouser pair for 30 rupees.
Okay.
We introduced the concept of laundry by the kilo.
Okay.
So we would weigh your clothes and we would charge you according to the weight of the clothes, because we realized that India is a very wholesale driven market.
And how did you acquire customers, and then how did you scale Uclean after the first shop?
So when I talk about the first shop, laundry, if you look at it, it's a very hyper local business. As a customer, I would be very comfortable giving out to my clothes to a shop that is generally located within 2 to 3 kilometers of my place of residence. Reason for that is I need to know where that shop is because my clothes are very expensive.
Yeah.
While you might be charging me 80 rupees for a kg of clothes, but those clothes I have bought them for at least 10,000 rupees.
Mhm.
So that is why to win the confidence of the customer, to make him feel comfortable, you need to be as close to the customer as possible, which makes the entire business very hyper local. So newspaper inserts, newspaper pamphlets, no parking boards, pole branding, these hyper local marketing activities, which are not very expensive, but help you get noticed in the area that you want to get noticed. That really helped us quickly build the customer for our first store in Vasant Kunj and Sushant Low. When we built these two stores, what we also realized was that this business can be very quickly scaled up because at the end of the day, majority of the process is controlled by the laundry machine. So that's when we realized that if we can train someone quickly on how to operate these machines, provide him with a trained iron man, he
Mhm.
can very successfully and profitably run his own Uclean store.
Yeah.
And anyway, franchising has always been the closest to my heart. So that's when we decided that we should start franchising out this model. And mid of 2017 is when we first experimented with franchising
Mhm.
with a couple of stores in Hyderabad and Pune.
Right.
We spent a lot of time there. We understood the challenges the franchisees would face, the expectations the franchisees would have, our expectations of the franchisees. And then basis that for the next 6 months, we developed a complete franchising playbook.
I mean, you're based out of Delhi. You could like go to local laundromats and then talk to people and then convince them. But how did you convince people in Hyderabad and Bangalore?
So when we launched our first outlet in Hyderabad, which was actually a franchisee outlet, and in fact, I'm very proud to say that my first franchisee partner is also the owner of this company called Chota Bheem,
Oh,
which
nice.
is India's biggest cartoon character. And I knew the gentleman from almost my 7, 8 years back when I had consulted him while I was running FranGlobal. And he was very excited that I was doing something new. And he himself came and said that I would like to be your first franchisee. I'm pretty sure if you're doing it, then this should be a successful model. So that's how our first franchisee, in fact, came to us organically. With the only difference that in Delhi, while we used pamphlets in English and Hindi,
Mhm.
in Hyderabad, we used the pamphlets in Telugu, English, and Hindi.
And you're also expanding globally to Bangladesh and I think in Nepal as well. So does the same model work there?
Yes. So, in fact, Bangladesh is a slightly different model. And we are also experimenting with that model in a couple of cities in India, where we have realized that Dhaka in particular, it has exorbitantly high rentals. So, a Dhaka rental would be as high as South Mumbai. So, which means that renting out a 250 or 300 square feet space in Dhaka for a reasonable amount is almost next to impossible.
Mhm.
So, setting up a Uclean unit, having live laundry machines, having a 300 square feet space in Dhaka is going to be very difficult. So, we have pivoted to a different model, which is very similar to what your diagnostic chains do in India.
Mhm.
So when you look at a typical diagnostic chain model in India, they would have these collection centers spread across the city. These collection centers would be entrusted with the responsibility of collecting blood or urine or whatever samples need to be collected. Once collected, these samples would be sent to the diagnostic testing lab. Now, this would be a very big setup, set up over 3,000, 4,000 square feet with all the modern day equipment and machinery. But this would not be inside the city. This would be on the outskirts of the city to
Where
keep
it's
the rent
cheaper.
under control.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they would do the testing, they would send the result to you, and then you would deliver the result to your end customer.
Mhm.
So we have piloted with a similar model in Dhaka,
Mhm.
and these would be small collection centers. So nothing more than 50 square feet in area, which are responsible only for collecting the dirty clothes, keeping them at the collection center. And every day, the vehicle from the plant would come at a stipulated time to the collection center, collect the dirty clothes, deliver the clean clothes from the previous day to the collection center for further delivery to the end user. and the cycle would keep getting repeated.
Were you very conscious about the unit economics from the very beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially where you're in the franchise business, it becomes very important that you decipher or you decode how to make each unit profitable. Because whatever you learn today is what you're going to train your franchisees on tomorrow.
So Uclean is now an on-demand app as well, where someone can order a laundromat, the person would come and then the clothes would get laundered. So how did you learn those skills to start an app, like a tech business in a sense, in the traditional sense?
Sure. So I think the most ironical part about Uclean is the fact that it is called Uclean.
Mhm.
So when we started Uclean, I was actually inspired by Hollywood movies or what you see in US and Europe, where do-it-yourself laundry is very popular. People would come down to the laundromat, clean their clothes themselves. So the genesis of Uclean is actually from the similar concept where you as a customer would come and clean your clothes yourself. We tested it out for almost 1.5 to 2 months with our first couple of outlets in Delhi NCR. And that's when we realized that Uclean would never work in India. It has to be we clean for you. You
Yeah.
need to offer them a pick up and drop service. You need to clean their clothes because manpower is cheap. So because we had spent a lot of time on coming up with the brand name, creating a fantastic logo, creating a theme and brand color around it. So we did not change the name of the brand, but honestly, Uclean is an ironical to what we are currently doing, which is we clean for you. And technology, I would say, became a natural enabler for us because we saw that customers were pretty used to ordering food from a big basket app or ordering grocery from, say, Grofers or ordering food from Zomato. So people were pretty used to the app. People expected an app. And so we developed an app. We also created a website, which is when you land on our website, which is www.uclean.in, you would realize that you can directly place an order from there. The first thing that you would realize is that you can place an order. So we consciously built these systems and integrations and made this a tech-led business. And I'll make an overarching statement here that speaking on behalf of the entire laundry industry in India, I can vouch that not more than 40% customers place their order through technology. 60% still use the phone.
Makes sense. So it all boils down to understanding the customer and what their needs are, and not like bringing an app and saying that, hey, use my app.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would still say that for laundry industry, app in some ways is still a vanity. You could still do pretty well without that.
And how did you recruit people, both blue collar laundromats and also white collar tech professionals for you?
So the initial set of tech professionals, again, because we did not have access to a lot of funds, so they were my college juniors, and since they were supporting their senior, they decided to do it on a part-time basis, and really I paid them peanuts for the fantastic work that they did. For the blue collared, I would say that is the bigger challenge when you talk about the laundry industry. The initial part was easy when we were growing slowly, we were growing gradually. We used to get all these manpower from reference. So the team that we hired for our first couple of stores, they were able to recommend team members for the next 8 to 10 stores also. But beyond that, we started facing a challenge once we started opening 10 to 12 stores in a given month. So that's when we decided that we need to address this problem right now itself before it becomes, I would say, a hurdle to our growth. And that's when we set up an informal academy. We still have that in Noida, where what we do is, if you look at it, the majority of launderers and the majority of ironmen that are there in the industry right now, they come from Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, and Northeast India. So what we did was we set up this informal academy in Noida, where we source people from all these states of India. They come through reference. We train them at this academy. We pay for their stay. We have taken two flats, two 3-bedroom flats. We get these guys to stay in those flats. We provide them with food. We also give them a stipend of 3,000 rupees for the 15 days that they get trained. And then we deploy them further at these stores.
And then summarizing the whole Uclean conversation. So how does the next 5 to 10 years look like for you? Are you raising funds and stuff?
So absolutely, I would say the next 5 to 10 years, cleaning industry is one of those rare industries that have been benefited by the COVID-19 situation. If you look back, when you look at the overall franchising industry, you would realize that traditionally restaurants, salons, preschools, and gyms, these have been the four franchising favorite. If you traveled back, if you took the time machine and you went back 5 years, and when you questioned someone that, are you looking for a franchisee? And if the answer to that is yes, the next question, when you ask him which sector you're looking at, without exception, you would hear either a restaurant or a gym or a salon or a preschool. Because of COVID-19, suddenly cleaning industry, edtech, and health tech have become the three hottest industries that people want to look at. And this is going to continue because COVID is going to remain for the next couple of years. Hopefully not, but the way things look like, it should remain in the system. So cleaning would continue to become a very important and a favorite industry for prospective franchisees. So I would see that in the next couple of years, we target to get to at least 1,000 franchisees. We are already present in 70 cities of India. And I would say that India alone has an opportunity for at least 5,000 Ucleans. So I would want to make sure that in the next 5 years, we at least meet 20 to 25% of that target. And apart from that, we are also very keen on the African market, the MENA region, which is the Middle East and North Africa, and the SAARC region in particular. So we would want to have a presence in at least 15 to 20 international locations in the next 5 years.
Now I want to talk more about Arunabh as a person. So how do you learn and unlearn things? You have had a very interesting journey, must have learned a lot of things, but how do you unlearn things as well?
Yeah, I think that's a rather difficult question. And I would say a very valid question because as entrepreneurs, you sometimes fooled by your founder's ego. So I have seen it with myself also that as founders, you sometimes tend to believe that whatever you're thinking is right. And you tend to ignore what other people try to tell you, or sometimes you also tend to ignore the voice of the customer. And I've learned it the hard way. So there have been really tough lessons that I have learned in the last 4.5 years. Uclean in particular has been tougher than FranGlobal, which was a rather straightforward business. And what I've realized is the only thing that I keep telling myself is I have to be open to every suggestion. It does not necessarily mean that you accept every suggestion, but you need to be open to listen to every possible suggestion. And it could be coming from anywhere. It could be your customer, it could be your team member, it could be your vendor, or it could be even the technology platform. And another thing that you need to do is you need to be really open to understanding and accepting. If you genuinely feel that the suggestion has some validity, the argument has some strength, you need to go ahead and accept it.
And as a founder, you might have like 100 different things going on in different franchisee locations. So how do you unwind and how do you zone out?
Yeah, so you're very right. In fact, we have more than 250 franchisees, and every franchisee has a dedicated WhatsApp group, and I'm a part of every WhatsApp group. So today I'm a part of more than 300 WhatsApp group, both Uclean and non-Uclean. One escape that I have, which I would not say is a non-professional escape, is that I try to attend a lot of Uclean launches. Okay. And we keep launching across India. So in fact, a few days back, we had a launch in Lucknow and I traveled all the way along with a couple of my team members, which one helps me get to know a new neighborhood, get to know potentially a new city, helps me unwind. The travel part I really enjoy. But very importantly, I love to understand the person behind the franchisee.
Makes sense. And then what would you say is the purpose of your life?
One is I want to build a legacy, which could be Uclean, which could be a business, which could be something else that should last my lifetime. So I want to be known for that legacy even when I'm dead. And the second is about 3 years back, I've been blessed with a daughter. So I really hope that when she grows up, she always says that she always feels that her father was the best.
That's wonderful. And then lastly, what advice would you give to a 21-year-old Arunabh who is graduating from IIT Bombay?
One, don't be too fixated about money. You are really young at this point in time. You're not married. You don't have a lot of financial complications. which are going to come up in the next 10 years, the first focus should be on learning. So learn as much as you can, not necessarily only where you're working, but try and understand what else is happening in the world. Try to read books, try to talk to as many people as you can, try to assimilate as many experiences as possible, whatever your budget allows. But your first focus should be on learning more than anything else, because these learnings, the things that you grasp now, they would help you a lot in the later part of your life when you would not have so many liberties.
And now we are at the last section of the podcast. We'll do a short rapid fire round. So whatever comes to your mind, you can say that first. So what book are you reading right now?
I'm reading Good to Great.
Nice. What are your top 3 favorite apps? Except Uclean, of course.
Top 3 favorite apps. One is Make My Trip, Amazon. And third would be, I would say, third would be Swiggy.
Nice. If you had $1 million to invest right now, where would you invest?
Yeah, so if you're talking about a business idea, I would love to invest it in a business that focuses profitably on recycling.
Nice. And lastly, whom would you love to have on the Uclean board?
I would say Jeff Bezos.
Yeah. So that's the end of the podcast, Arunabh. Thank you so much for your time and had absolute fun talking to you.
Thank you, Kushal. Wonderful talking to you.
We hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode with Arunabh. Please like, share, and subscribe to Nails and Hammers on the platform of your choice.